Please watch all 4 videos on how to maintain your Filter Queen vacuum. Click the like button, subscribe to my channel, comment below, share my videos, and call me if you want to order parts or supplies. You'll have to get yourself a maintenance kit that has all the inside filters and seals and belts and gaskets and everything, and you can get that from me if you want. This is your lower motor support. We will begin by installing the vibration dampeners. There's an upper and a lower, and the upper one takes a little bit of effort to get it to fit over that motor like that, but it'll fit on there, and the bottom one is just the same. So there's an upper and a lower motor vibration dampener, and then the motor sits into that lower motor support, and this is your upper motor support. So the motor is sandwiched between the upper and lower motor supports, and once we get that all fully seated nice and tight, we'll put in these 3 screws that go into the lower motor support. Sometimes they thread right into it, sometimes they thread into a nut on the other side of it. Alright, next is your decorative grill that fits on top if you have a decorative grill. Otherwise, just the handle, and that's these 4 screws that hold it into place. Alright, after this we'll put in your internal motor filter or your exhaust filter. And I like to kind of put it in as clean as I can, as nice as I can, and that cardboard piece helps to hold it in place. Some machines don't have a cardboard piece. Some of them it's built into the filter, and some of them it's like this, it's separate. So I like to poke around and make sure that looks good, and then that way when the machine is turned on, it'll force that filter into place, but you can make sure it looks good by hand also. So it's very important this cord goes underneath that switch, or in some way not getting pinched in that switch, because if it gets pinched in the switch, the machine won't turn on or off properly. So it'll poke through that chrome dome like that. It'll poke through like that. And then we want to check around all the edges to make sure there's no cords hanging out. We got all those inside. That all looks pretty good. And then, like I said, I like to make sure that filter is nice in there so it looks pretty. But when we turn the machine on, the machine will force it into place. You can still poke around. Let's check the side to side of that filter to make sure it's of that switch to make sure it isn't rubbing against the sides. That looks pretty good. And the up and down is pretty easy to test. You can test that. Next, we'll install this little ring, and you may have to spin it around a little bit to get the holes to line up in the proper spot. It's different from model to model. After you get those in, next will be another filter going into the cap of the machine, and there are several different caps, and there are several different types of filters that go in those caps. So get these 3 screws snug, and then there's your cap, and there's one of your cap filters. Different for every model. Alright, so now this is a rubber on-off switch, and it goes straight in. You push it in to get it to stay on there. This is your attachment crown, and you can see my phone number right there if you need to call me. So those 2 nipples will go into those 2 little holes right there. It's very important those 2 nipples go into those holes, and then the back will just kind of snap in place. And you can wind your cord around underneath that attachment crown if you want. If you're lucky or good enough to get into that little spot like that, that's nice. This is what's called your secondary filter, even though it's the 3rd filter. It just protects your motor in case anything gets past the first line of defense, the first paper cone. So this should never be dirty. Now this spot right here, sometimes you may have to take some sandpaper or a knife to that because it can get a little bit warped from the heat of the motor sometimes. That's your plastic perforated cone. So that's about set. Now this rubber piece, this rubber gasket, has a seam in it, and the metal of that tank fits into that seam. It's very important that that metal goes into that seam. Then we'll put a new paper filter in there. So that's 1. That's our first filter. Our second one is this black optional filter that you can get. You can run it without the black one. So that's 1 and 2. This is the 3rd one, is that secondary filter. That's the fourth one, and then the fifth one is that cap filter. So there are 5 filters to the filter queen. Sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less, but with this we're keeping it pretty basic. Make sure those 3 tabs are always sticking out along the sides, and clamp the top to bottom. And this is the same thing. This rubber bumper has a little seam that the metal fits inside also. This is just a spacer. It raises up the machine a little bit so that it clamps down properly. Again, you want to always make sure those 3 tabs are always sticking out so your filter is properly installed. That's very important. That's the most important thing. And basically, that's it. Give me a call if you need any parts or supplies for it. This one's ready to go. Please watch all 4 videos on how to maintain your Filter Queen vacuum. Click the like button, subscribe to my channel, comment below, share my videos, and call me if you want to order parts or supplies.